Hello, welcome to the Tennessee Informer. I'm your host, Dave Vance. Our guest tonight is Bobby Harshbarger. He's the District 4 Senate candidate running against longtime incumbent, John Lunsberg. But first, if you have an announcement from a conservative organization that you'd like to broadcast on this show, please send the information to tennesseeinformer.tv@gmail.com the Friday before the show. If you want our state to stand up to federal overreach, the best way to do that is support the nullification process bill sponsored by Senator Janice Bowling and Representative Bud Halsey that they intend to bring back this session. Visit tncss.weebly.com/call to action, sign the petition, and follow the instructions on the link. Our state senators and reps need to know we want this legislation passed when they return in January. Now is the time to get candidates for state office on record as well. DC will never fix DC. Only the states can fix DC, and we have to demand that our states stand up and do that and defend both our U.S. and Tennessee Constitution. Also, you may have heard about the threat of the WHO pandemic treaty. Some good news on that front. There's been a lot of pushback. There was pushback by our senators, pushback by representatives, and pushback by the governors. And as of last Friday, the WHO did not have a framework to work with as far as voting on something this week. Their meeting is from the 27th of May through the 1st of June. So they're telling us that there's nothing going to pass this week. If that turns out to be true, that's good news, but they're not giving up. They are definitely not giving up. It's good that our state and our federal reps and our governors stood up and pushed back on this. And we just need to make sure more and more people get educated, and we're going to have to watch them like a hawk. What we have to be concerned about is, even though there won't be a treaty, which the Senate already told them not to bother, in the past, these types of things have been implemented through executive orders and through policy versus an actual treaty. So just keep your eyes open. We'll talk more about this issue in our second show tonight. Bear with me as well. I'm still having some vision issues from a torn retina a couple weeks ago, so I'm still having to use the notes. Okay, the Gibson County GOP Reagan Day Picnic is Saturday, June 8th from 4 to 7 p.m. Tickets are $50 per person, and May 25th was the last day to buy tickets. Ribs and chicken with all the trimmings are on the menu. The guest speaker is Mr. John DeBerry, Senior Advisor to Governor Lee. The event will be held at 88 Springs Creek Highway in Medina, Tennessee, home of Alicia Owens. Visit the website, Gibson County TNGOP. They may still have a few tickets left, but like I said, the 25th was the deadline. The Murray County Reagan Day event will be Friday, June 14th, 6 p.m. at Puckett's Restaurant in Columbia, Tennessee. Guests include Todd Starnes, Representative Andy Ogles, Representative Tim Burchett, and Tony Lauren from Fox News. Tickets are $100. Visit the murraytngop.com for more details. That sounds like a good event. That's going on, I think, close to the same time as the Statesman's Dinner. The good thing about this is there really won't be any rhinos there, because the Statesman's Dinner is going to be packed with rhinos, I guarantee you that. Now a little bit about our guest, Bobby Harshbarger. He was raised in Sullivan County and attended Dobie Bennett High School. He later graduated from East Tennessee University with a Bachelor of Science degree, a double major in biology and chemistry. Bobby received his doctorate degree from Mercer University College of Pharmacy in Atlanta, Georgia. Bobby met the love of his life, Erin, while in pharmacy school. Together they returned to Sullivan County, where they planted their roots and raised a family. When he's not giving piggyback rides to his two young boys, Bobby is serving patients in his community by making sure they get the medicine they need and the care that they deserve. Governor Bill Lee recently appointed Bobby to serve on the Tennessee Board of Pharmacy. It was established in 1893. The Tennessee Board of Pharmacy is tasked with setting healthcare standards and responsible for licensing and registering individuals and businesses with the pharmaceutical industry. Thank you for being with us. How are you doing tonight?
Doing well. Thank you, Dave.
We're glad to have you on. Glad to see somebody challenging an incumbent. And if anybody deserved challenging, it's John Lundberg. Anyway, what prompted you to run?
Well, I've not really been in politics. I've got some family lineage there, but what really struck me is, as of late, being a father of two young sons, when you become a parent, your perspective changes and it goes from being about you to being about them. And one thing that I started looking at a little bit closer were some of these committee votes. And one in particular was the gay pride flag. And so that was really what spearheaded me into this decision is, my biggest concern is I do not want my children exposed to this in any way, shape, or form. And I don't want other folks, innocent children, to be exposed to this in their public schools as well. So that was kind of one of the I guess, the tipping point for me. And, one of the things I've realized as well is that Nashville has owned this seat for way too long. And the reason that I'm running is to take that seat back for the folks here in Sullivan and Hawkins County. It's time to take the seat back.
And that happens a lot. They get up there and they definitely forget who they represent. They seem to think they represent the governor or the lieutenant governor in the case of the senators, or the chamber or the NFIB, and they forget all about the people. And of course, if the people aren't watching, they get by with it. Now,
Right.
if I recall, did he actually vote against keeping the pride flags out, or was he one of those that just didn't vote? What's the case on that?
Yeah, so in the committee meeting, he actually voted no, and he killed the bill. And when it made it to the floor, there was a little political theater there. So he was given the opportunity to cast a yay vote. Now, Senate Majority Leader he came together with Democrats to vote against it. And then next thing you know, you've got 10 to 12, senators just mysteriously not be there to vote. And so the bill ultimately died. So that was kind of just trying to give him cover. So when I come after him, he can say, oh, no, I voted yes. But, the biggest thing is when you look at folks and they flip flop and they backflip, that's probably one of the biggest backflips I've seen in politics in a while.
So let me make sure. So he voted yes in committee and then did not vote on the floor? Is that how that worked?
Well, he voted no in committee and it passed, and then he voted yes on the floor. And like I said, that yes vote was more for an opportunity to, I guess, combat my attack on him, saying that he voted to allow the gay pride flag in our classrooms.
Okay. Well, I mean, those that follow politics know that generally speaking, things are, for the most part, the committees are going to, if you make it through the committee, it's normally going to make it through the floor, not always, but normally.
Right.
And the things that they don't want to pass, they try to kill in committee. They do try to do that. Now, I do remember back after, since we're on the topic of the whole gay thing, back after the gay marriage decision or opinion in 2015, he was in the House. And I remember that Mark Pody, who was still in the House, had a bill to basically said, okay, yeah, the Supreme Court's given its opinion, but we have a constitutional amendment to our state constitution that says marriage is only between a man and a woman. And Mark Pody was trying to get that bill through. And I do remember that Lundberg was one of those who undercut him in committee. I remember that very well.
Okay.
So anyway,
Good.
just, I guess you could say he's kind of consistent on that one. So.
Right.
So what are some other things that prompted you to run as far as what you were seeing happen or not happen in Nashville?
Right. Well, a couple of other things, I think one of the biggest issues I saw was, there was a recent bathroom bill, so it would allow a man or a woman, but it's trying to give teeth to an existing bill. So it would allow a civil action against someone of the opposite sex coming into the bathroom and knowingly staying there. And he killed that. And so, folks here in Northeast Tennessee, we just don't feel that's our value system to allow, a man to go into a girl's locker room or bathroom because they identify it that day. That's just not our value. So that was one thing. Then you start kind of peeling back and you start looking at immigration. And, way back, I believe he was in the House 2015. And, that's the one thing I've learned too is, when you've been in a position or you've had a job for close to 20 years, it transitions from a job to a career. And that's where we're at here. We've got a career politician who has forgotten who has put him there. And I think you mentioned it earlier, this is kind of a vicious cycle to where you're bound to climb that ladder of leadership. And in my opinion, when you are in that position, you can either use that power and influence to bring funding and resources back to the district that put you there, or you can do what Senator Lundberg has done and use that power and influence to just move yourself up the ladder. And, to me, that's wrong. And I think folks here in Northeast Tennessee realize that. And that's why, come August 2nd, I'll be the new Republican nominee.
So you're getting a pretty good response out there then? I mean, for you to say that, you must be feeling pretty good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. So the one thing that you hear in politics, you hear things on the streets, you have to verify. So I'd say a few weeks ago, his camp did a poll and numbers didn't come back good in his favor. So we did a poll and numbers didn't come back in his favor as well. So I know based on that, he's underwater and he's going to do anything and everything he can to, pull whatever lever, ask for whatever favor. He's been up there for nearly 20 years. He's going to do anything he can to either discredit me or create some type of a bogus negative, campaign, just to stay in that seat. So, numbers aren't looking good for Senator Lundberg.
Right. And we were talking before. Did you say that Lee had been there recently, Governor Lee had been there recently to campaign for him? Or am I thinking about an earlier conversation with somebody else?
No, yeah. So he, from what I've gathered, he was here today to do a fundraising luncheon for John, and don't have all the, didn't go obviously, so don't have any details on that. But I do know he's working pretty hard to keep his man in office. So once again, it's not going to be I've told folks this. It's not going to be the Nashville elite who win this race. Is going to be the everyday voter that turns up on election day and puts me over the top.
Yeah. Usually events like that with all those, you can raise a lot of money, but it still comes down to who casts the most votes. So, door knocking and those type of things really those are a lot of times are what make the difference, especially when you're talking about a challenging incumbent.
Exactly.
So kind of on the whole theme here, woke education. That's one of the things that's listed on your website, and you already kind of hit on that some with the pride flag. Anything else that you want to hit there?
Yeah, so kind of digging a little bit deeper, I saw where he had actually blocked a bill for banning obscene and pornographic material in our public school libraries. He killed that. He, for whatever reason, opposed notifying parents before teachers would teach about gender identity. He voted against that, and for whatever reason, once again, unbeknownst to me, I have no idea why, but he voted against. I guess in fifth grade there was a bill years ago to have Tennessee history be taught to fifth graders. Kind of put that in our curriculum, and he opposed that. So I know he's not from here, so I don't know if I don't know if that was the deal, but it doesn't make much sense to me.
Where's he from?
So I believe he's originally from Michigan, spent some time in Colorado, but I've not done that much research on him, just kind of focused on what he's done here in Tennessee. Right. But the biggest thing is I tell folks, I was born here, raised here, educated here, and I'm a product of this area.
On the different things you've brought up, has he offered any excuses? I'm sure somebody's had to ask him about some of these things. Has he explained any of the votes?
Well, that's kind of expected. Anytime you call someone out on their voting record, they're going to have every excuse under the sun. But then, the bottom line is like with, for example, the gay pride flag, uh, the vote was cast. He pushed the button, he made the vote, and you can't back off from that. I think one of the ones, it's funny. So another issue that kind of got me going was illegal immigration. And there was another bill that would have given more teeth to a bill previously that would have raised the fee from $1,000 to $5,000 fine to an individual who knowingly brought illegal aliens across our state lines. And he opposed that, killed it. And another one was, I think it was 2015, he voted to allow in-state tuitions to illegal immigrants.
Yeah.
And his argument is that back then it was for eligible students. So he's saying that, well, back in 2015, eligible students did not mean, illegal aliens. But in the most recent committee meeting talking about the Senate's version of the vouchers, the question was asked by another senator, does this include illegal aliens? And he said, well, this includes anyone who's eligible to go to school in Tennessee. And so the senator asked him again, does this include illegal aliens? And he said, yes, it does. So, I'm the type that I speak in plain English. I don't speak out of both sides of my mouth, and words are very powerful. And I'm not, trying to mince words there.
Right. I will tell you, and I know this has been kind of in the news a little bit, and we can talk about it a little bit later. The bill in reference to raising the fine from 1,000 to 5,000, there was some issues there because, number one, how you identify them is an issue. Okay, the bill relied on ICE and DHS to identify. So I don't even know how we do that. And I'm not defending Lundberg by any means, but I'm just telling you that specific bill. And there was still an exception in there for common carriers, and they never did anything. The bill never addressed the issue of all the NGOs that are accepted, that are allowed to bring these people in. So Anyway, you mentioned vouchers. So, that's been a hot issue, and I think Bill Lee is pretty much wed to vouchers. He wants them so bad that in my mind, there's, number one, I don't understand with everything going on why vouchers are the most important thing. Our state, in my opinion, has done a pretty lousy job of getting the garbage out of our schools. Back to the whole woke education issue. I don't really see how vouchers are going to fix that. If you can't fix it in your public schools, and now you want more money to spend on education, and you're not fixing I just don't quite get that. I think vouchers are way overrated. So where are you at on vouchers?
So, when you look back at history, I think going back to, I believe it was around 2006, they tried to isolate the issues. They saw that there was just, turnover after turnover of just poorly run schools and school systems, particularly in Memphis and Nashville, Chattanooga. And what they tried to do is implement the ESAs, so the educational safety accounts. And what they saw is then they decided, well, we'll change out the teachers. We'll put the best teachers in these failing school districts, see what happens. Okay, nothing really improved. The needle did not move. Then they said, well, we'll change out the administrators, and nothing improved. We'll change out the Board of Education. Nothing improved. So what they've seen is that it's that, I don't want to say it's just a socioeconomic issue, but there's you can only do so much between 8:30 and 3:30 during the day.
Yep.
And it's that structure afterwards that will really affect a child.
Yep.
And so I get where it's coming from. They're trying to figure out, it's the school choice, and they want to allow those, children to be able to go to a better school system. Now, the thing I don't quite understand is now it went from those particular, districts, which, I know it was initially deemed unconstitutional to cherry pick where you want this. But the fact of the matter and the bottom line is that I've gone out and I've listened to folks here in my district. And, my mom's always told me God gave you 2 ears to listen twice as much. So that's what I've done. So when I'm out knocking doors, I'm asking folks what are their opinions. I've spoken with parents, I've spoken with teachers, I've spoken with administrator, I've spoken with Board of Education members, I've spoken with folks in homeschool, I've spoken with people in private school. And the gist that I get from them in this particular area is they don't see the need yet. They're not fully in favor of that yet.
Right.
And so that's the idea. That's the information that I'm gathering when I'm out and about. And they've all got different reasoning. So for the one thing with I think a lot of it is accountability. So they're saying, well, with public schools, it's the testing requirements, but then it's not necessarily the same. It's apples and oranges with testing between public and private. And folks, are telling me they don't want their tax dollars going to an area that doesn't have the same requirements. And there's a whole gamut of things with vouchers. It's just I'm trying to educate myself the best I can, and going to the source and just trying to get as much feedback as I can, because that's the thing I've learned is to be a representative, you represent the people that put you there.
Yeah.
You're not there to get along to go along, and be at the beck and call of leadership. Now I get leadership's role, and trying to craft and move a mighty ship, but the bottom line is you're put there to represent the people in your district.
Yeah.
Bottom line.
And if the governor wants to be a super legislator, he should have run for the legislature instead of running for governor, because we have this little thing called state constitution, and the legislature passes the laws, and he can make and this is the paraphrase, from time to time make recommendations, but that's not what this governor does. That's not what most of our governors have done. They just, the legislature facilitates them undermining our Constitution and allowing them to promote all these bills every year. So that's something the public needs to know and think about. Anything else you want to say on the education issue?
That's like I said, I've got 2 small children, so education is right in my alley. I've got a 3rd grader just went through 3rd grade retention. So that's some of the concerns that I've heard from parents, teachers, everyone involved in that process. That was the one week I tried to. I don't walk on eggshells, but I was trying not to do anything to create any more anxiety in the morning when I take them to school.
Right.
But we got through it. We got through it, so that's good.
Pro-life. Now, of course, we are a pro-life state. What do you want to do in regards to? Do you want to strengthen that more, or what are your ideas? Or do you this is what your way of letting everybody know that you are pro-life, and with whatever exceptions, if any?
Right. No, I believe life starts at conceivement, and you die of natural causes. That's the one thing. Being a pharmacist, and we kind of talked about this before. I'm not big pharma. Independent pharmacy, mom and pop. Insurances aren't necessarily my friend. They like to recoup a lot of money, clawbacks, things like that. But what I've seen through nearly 15 years of being a practicing pharmacist is, in certain circumstances, I think it was DuPont or one of those guys. They said better living through chemistry. So there are moments where you can extend your life, using different medications. But as far as pro-life, I've got 2 small children. I want everyone to be successful. The one thing I want to differentiate is, and I think a lot of folks give Republicans, they say, oh, well, you say you're pro-life, but really you're just pro-birth. You just kind of let it in there. But in my case, I see how, when you provide the resources to these children, because it's one thing to want to make sure that they're alive, but you want to make sure that you can do everything you can to allow them to have a quality of life. And I think when you've got, local communities, nonprofits, you've got grants available to give these children a chance. because you don't want a child to be born and then have just, no quality of life whatsoever, living on the streets, being in foster care for their entire 18 years of life until they're an adult. You want to give them the resources to, not only survive, but thrive. So that's where I'm at. I'm pro-life, not just pro-birth. And that's one of the things, looking at Senator Lundberg's record is, it's funny. So he co-sponsored a bill, more or less a heartbeat bill, but then when it came to the vote on the floor, he didn't vote for it. So that's kind of another trend thing is, it's you say one thing, but then you do another. So, to me, that's, and once again, most people, they don't see that.
Right, right. You got to look at more than just the scorecard, and I don't care what the organization is that's putting the scorecards out. That does not tell the whole story. If it did, just think about all the people that we, know. If you look at them, you're like, we know this guy's no good. Then you look, their rating is 85, 90, 95. But if you know the real story, you know that those scores don't tell the whole story.
Exactly. Yeah, and like we were talking about before, a lot of it is, people focus on the floor votes, but it's in the committees where things either come alive or they die.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Government overreach. Now, keep in mind, this is only an hour show, and we've used almost 30 minutes, but have at it. Us pushing back on federal overreach, which, okay, I got to ask you this. 10th Amendment, nullification, what are your thoughts?
So that's the one thing that I've sat down with a number of folks, and I've actually got an entire Saturday dedicated to educating myself even more from a constitutional attorney. And Bud Holsey, he represents me in and I believe the House. I'm trying to think what district that is. I think it's first or second. Anyways, Bud is my House rep, and I think Bud Holsey is a patriot, and so I'm it's one of those things that's not really been on my radar because you don't really hear about it very much, but over these last few years, you start to get more familiar with it. And the folks that I've spoken with have really kind of said, hey, you really need to get involved with this. And that's why, I think the course is normally 40 hours. So I'm getting the abbreviated version, a 5-hour course on a Saturday afternoon. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Well, I think that should be a requirement, really, probably a 40-hour course for all of our elected officials. And I think probably Jeff Cobble could teach it. But if I was going to have a rep teach it, it would be Bud Halsey. He's a great guy. Anything else you want to say? I mean, one of the issues we have is the federal overreach. And I think, our state, our representatives at the state level and our senators, they take an oath to the U.S. and the state constitution. And I know we hear a lot of times, well, federal government, nothing I can do about it. No, the state are the guys and gals that are supposed to do something about it. So right. I hope that if you get elected, that you'll be one of the guys that steps up and says, hey, this is a 10th Amendment issue. And
right.
And at the state level, we got that pesky little thing in the front of our state constitution that, our elected officials take this oath to, but I don't think most of them have read it. It's called Declaration of Rights. And and encompasses most of the same rights that we have in our Bill of Rights, and plus a lot more. But, we got a lot of overreach, both from the federal government and from the state government.
No, and that's the one thing, even just being my profession, being one of the most overregulated professions, because everything we do is documented, from the prescriptions that we fill to where did the prescription come from, who wrote the prescription. Then you have your individual state laws that you have to follow. Then you have the federal laws that you have to follow. And then on top of that, just to muddy everything up, you have the insurance and their specific, rules to follow. And when it comes to insurance, I've got a love-hate, because sometimes they'll reimburse worth loving them, but then most of the time they pay you right over what it costs for the medication, and I hate them. So that's one of the things as far as just trying to figure out how to rein those guys in and you know make it an even playing field.
Well, when all else fails, we do have a Second Amendment.
Hmm.
And so let me hear where you're at on the Second Amendment, specifically constitutional carry, and anything else you want to add to.
Yeah, absolutely. So years ago, I actually went through the process, had my concealed carry, so I've got that, and you know, it really kind of speared from just being in the pharmacy business, and it's you don't see a lot, but you never know when somebody's going to try to come in and cause harm.
Right.
And probably I'd say probably 15 years ago, someone actually robbed our pharmacy, and I think that's where my mom got her Tennessee Tough slogan, because she told them where to go, and stuck it to them. So I kind of get that from her. But no, I think it's super important that we abide by the Second Amendment. I think that kind of goes over with federal overreach. And anytime we're signing up for something, the fear is are we going to be put on a list? If you buy ammunition online, are you going to be put on a list? If I think gun shows should be, you know, I think they're already regulated. I don't see any issue with that. The one thing I do remember, with my opponent, Senator Lumberg, and I want to say it was a few years back, but it was specifically about constitutional carry, and the vote, he voted no on a voice vote, but then went back and went to the clerk and changed his vote to present not voting, even though there's video evidence that he voted no because he didn't want to come across as a anti-Second Amendment politician. So I'm fully behind that. I think that we have the right to bear arms and protect ourselves, protect our families, and once again, having two young sons, it's super important to me.
Well, the governor told us that he gave us constitutional carry a couple of years ago, but there's all these places you can't carry, and there's all these exceptions. And the honest politicians, and there are a few of them up there, not a lot, but there are a few, they'll admit that what we currently have is not constitutional carry. And, I'm not aware of, Senator Lundberg's been up there long. I'm not aware of him leading the charge at any time to, fully vest our people with the Second Amendment rights, or as in the Tennessee Constitution, Section 26, that, they have all these restrictions. We have constitutional carry, they tell us, yet it's still in the state of Tennessee illegal to carry a weapon with the intent to go armed, although I don't understand how you would carry it without the intent to go armed. But that's what the TCA
Right.
says. I can't give you the numbers. You could always talk to Richard Archie or John Harris and get the exact numbers, TCA code for that. But it's to me embarrassing to be in Tennessee and not really have full constitutional. And the sad thing is, the Supreme Court, in their opinion, the Bruin opinion, basically said if the restriction didn't exist in 1791, then it's not valid now. That's been almost 2 years. That's been almost, next month, June will be 2 years since they made an opinion. Now, our state, under Governor Haslam at the time, but Lundberg was up there, I think he was still in the House, I mentioned this earlier, folded in about an hour and a half when the Supreme Court gave their opinion on marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Folded in an hour and a half. Almost 2 years after they gave their opinion on Bruin, we're still not in compliance.
Right.
So there's something definitely out of whack there. Anyway, red flag laws are another issue.
Mm-hmm. No, and that's to me, that's a super. I think that when I look at red flags, it's kind of figuring out, that particular group. They want to try to figure out which window to come in to be able to take your guns. That's really what it's all about. And for this, I think the one you may be referencing to is for, the psychiatrist to be able to make the opinion based on their professional, uh, you know, opinion, and then report you to, law enforcement. And for me, it's so funny in my world, a HIPAA violation is almost the death penalty. Like, you don't really come back if you have multiple HIPAA violations. But when it comes to certain things like this, it is, willy nilly. Hey, we don't really care. Just give us the information.
Yeah.
When it comes to someone who's armed. And to me, that just opens up Pandora's box.
Yeah, well, it's even worse than that, because it doesn't necessarily, depending on the type of red flag law you're talking, it's not necessarily a psychiatrist. I mean, even the current law right now that they have in the state, which is a red flag law, normally for domestic situations, right now, you can have your significant other, especially if you're going through a divorce, make the call, and you can have your weapons taken pretty easy right now. And I think what they tried to do back last year was they wanted to expand that to pretty much any situation, based on somebody feeling threatened. And there's just different variations of it. But anything that denies a Second Amendment right, that's a problem. And we have to be on the lookout for that. And of course, they'll do it under the guise of mental health. That's another concern. I mean, mental health issues are a problem, but a lot of times it's not a mental health issue; it's a moral health issue.
Right.
And so, it concerns me when people want to just snatch up guns. Hasn't worked. That hasn't done us any good in Memphis. Okay, Memphis has some pretty tough laws there on guns, but I don't see the murder rate going down.
Yeah, and that's the thing I was telling somebody the other day, and I don't believe there is a law in the books that is going to prevent some lone wolf person who has already committed to losing their life, and they are going to go out and make rampage. There's not anything on the books that you can take away as many guns, but that's not going to stop that one person from committing whatever crime that they've got in their mind, because it's pure evil.
Right.
And we can't legislate morality like you mentioned.
Absolutely, not to that degree anyway. Law enforcement.
Yeah, so I'm a huge back the blue. I think that too often that we've seen on the news and even locally where you've got uprisings and people just kind of think that law enforcement is the bad guy. But in reality, they're the ones here to protect us, because if we don't have rules, then we have chaos. And so I'm completely behind them. I think they need the funding they deserve, because they're the ones out here putting their lives on the line. It's one thing to be behind a pharmacy counter and serve patients. It's another to be out at a traffic stop handing out a ticket, and then next thing you know, they're 6 feet underground. They have my full support.
All right. Only thing I'll say on this, just me talking. I understand. I had law enforcement in my family. My dad was county sheriff, county magistrate, had other family members involved in law enforcement. I have friends that are in law enforcement, so I respect the job, but there are definitely some people that have no business with a badge and a gun. And so that's the only thing that I would say is I think just like every other profession in this day and age, that they have people in positions that shouldn't be there, we do have some of that in law enforcement as well. And I'm just making a comment, if you want to follow up with that.
I mean, in every profession, you've got a few bad apples that make it harder for the rest of us. Right. I remember, I think right when I graduated, there was a meningitis outbreak from a sterile product made from a pharmacy in, I believe it was Massachusetts. And I just got out of school. I was rocking and ready to go. And then all of a sudden they kill, I think it was a dozen to half a dozen people here in Tennessee. And that's when the federal government came in and split pharmacy right down the middle. So you have your independent pharmacies, and then you've got pharmacies that are regulated by the FDA, just like that. So I definitely know when you've got bad apples in every profession.
Right. Now, since you brought that up, so you said they split it down the middle between the independent and the independent are regulated as well, right?
Yeah, yeah. So what they call it is 503A and a 503B facility. So 503A facilities are your regular drugstores on the corner,
Okay.
the ones that fill normal prescriptions. And so a 503B facility are the ones who, because of that tragedy, now they're under the direct supervision of the FDA.
Oh,
So they're like a mini manufacturer.
okay. Now, you're under B then, right?
So we're still an A.
Still an A?
So we're still under the State Board of Pharmacy,
Okay.
which I think they mentioned earlier. That's one of the blessings that I've had, is to be an opportunity to be on the Board of Pharmacy, appointed by the governor, because I'd say, there are a few things. Compounding is one aspect that one of the things that I bring to the table as an expert. So it's nice to have someone on the board that understands the day-to-day activities.
Wow.
Uh, so that's always been helpful.
Okay. Good. Good. And this next topic kind of goes back to what we talked earlier with the whole woke garbage. Protect women's sports.
Hmm. Yeah. So, we talked about mental health earlier too. And I think that's what it is a mental health issue. When
I
a
agree.
man is magically turning into a woman, uh, to go play sports. So it's mediocre men trying to excel at sports, and it's just biologically it doesn't make any sense. So I adamantly oppose that, and that's the thing. I hate to see these young women who, especially in high school, and they train and train and train, and then they go to their state championships, and they have to compete against men with facial hair, testosterone, the whole nine yards. And I really can't believe the NCAA allowed that to happen to Raleigh Green. It makes no sense. Makes no sense. And then I have to try to answer that when my two young sons, they're both under the age of 10,
Right.
and they're asking me, Dad, why is a man competing against a woman? And I have to explain, this isn't right.
Right. Right. Well, and I know in the past in Tennessee, even in the county I live in Stewart County, it's a rural county, but the schools have made accommodation, not necessarily letting them use the bathroom, but I remember this was several years ago. Okay, some guy decided he was a girl now, and so they weren't going to let him use the girls' bathroom. At least they had enough sense not to do that, and they didn't want him to get beat up in the guys' bathroom. So they let him use the faculty bathroom, a particular faculty. And I'm thinking to myself, why are we accommodating? If you're accommodating that, you're promoting that.
Right.
And our state, in no way, shape, or form, should promote that kind of insanity and perversity. And so, but I still see things, the things going on in our schools should not be going on. Our state, and we talked about vouchers earlier, and Bill Lee is wed to vouchers. We could do more good for our state by actually following up on the suggestion they made earlier in the year, and I'll ask you if you agree with it, or the suggestion they made of not taking any federal funding for education. Is that something you would support?
So I've spoken with the parents, and they happen to be on the Board of Education. And when I brought that up, federal funding, I said, well, the issue that you can run into is you've got a lot of strings attached with federal funding.
Yep.
But their response is we're already underfunded, and we need every bit of help that we can get. So that's kind of where I've listened to parents. Now, once again, that's a parent, but then also an elected official on the VOE. But I do know, and that goes back to my experience in the pharmacy. When we're accepting Medicare and Medicaid, we've got to jump through every single hoop known to man, and we may or may not get reimbursed for what it's worth.
Right.
So you kind of go through each contract, see if it's worthwhile. But that's another thing. kind of jumping back and forth, but one of the Board of Education members I'd spoken with, the federal funding that they were going to receive had strings attached to a certain extent to recognize, transgenders and that community in their school. And, were they going to be forced to, invest in separate bathrooms? So that's all that there's a financial burden right there. So I, it's a fine line. I think, in certain aspects, we need more funding resources, but then what's the cost?
Yeah. Well, I think it's also a federal, the whole Title IX deal that Biden is pushing now, and I guess that's going to court, but, to me, that's just one more reason for states to say, okay, we're not going to take money to promote your garbage. And, I'm sure our state, just like the federal government, though not to the extreme, we've got waste. We definitely got waste. By the way, our state likes to brag every year about how fiscally responsible they are, but we get about 38% of our funding from the federal government. We're one of the highest, not the highest, but one of the highest. So that's another something to think about, is lessening our dependence on the federal government. Mm-hmm. Anything else that you want to say about the women's sports?
I think I've said enough. Like I said, I don't believe a man belongs in a woman's sport whatsoever. They don't belong in the bathrooms either.
Absolutely. And then the last thing you have listed on your site is family values. And of course, I don't know exactly what you do legislation wise, other than make sure that we're not passing laws that promote things contrary to that. But let me hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so like I said before, being a dad, when you become a parent, your perspective changes. So, at least for us up here in Northeast Tennessee, we have pretty strict value system. We want to take care of each other. We don't want the government all over our backs, and just for the most part, just be someone that the golden rule, treat those like you want to be treated. And that's kind of where I'm coming from family values. I don't want to have any of this indoctrination, whether it be in our schools or forced down our throats through any other aspect. But that's kind of where I'm coming from that.
Okay. Any other additional thoughts or comments?
Well, I think my biggest takeaway that I end every conversation with anybody I've knocked on their door is we have to get the vote out. The one thing about this area is that we're super conservative. We're one of the reddest districts in the nation, but our voter turnout is dismal. We have to get that up. I think what's happened is that we've got a supermajority in Nashville, and we get complacent. We get on autopilot. This is a prime example. Folks really don't, now that I'm kind of bringing to light what some of the voting records are, they can't believe no one's run against him in the past. So that's a big takeaway is, I'm going to have everybody and their brother coming after me, whether it's from, special interest groups, Nashville elite. So for me, it's trying to build an army, get the grassroots going. I accept any donations whatsoever. They'll try to outspend me left and right, but it's just getting that vote out, telling your friends, telling your family members, we've got to get the vote out.
Yeah. Well, it's the votes that count. I mean, the money's important, but the votes are that's what they tally up in the end. You mentioned the supermajority. We've had this Republican supermajority since I think 2012. And it is hard to get really conservative legislation through. And I think for a couple things, I think nationally, I think most people focus on national politics, federal politics versus state, because they have a skewed view of how things are supposed to work. They think it's federal, state. They don't understand that there's certain things are supposed to be federal and everything else is supposed to be state. They don't seem to get that. And like right now, everybody is focusing on the presidential election. And,
right.
Got to get Trump in there and got to save the country. Well, certainly going to support Trump. He'll be a leaky tourniquet at best, and he's only there 4 years. The only way to fix our country is for the states to step up and take back what's theirs. And so people need to realize that. And it is important that you could get a whole lot more done if we had people focusing at least as much on state level stuff as they do on the federal issues. And so hopefully you'll be able to draw their attention to enough things on his record, and maybe we'll have a different result, have a different senator next fall. Is there a Democrat in the race?
I think there might be an independent, but yeah, typically in our race, which I think in a lot of races around the state, the primary is typically the general, which once again,
absolutely.
Politics is very fickle.
Yeah.
So you can't count all your eggs just yet. So,
Right.
but yeah, August 2nd or August 1st is the election day, but early voting, that's crucial as well. So the July 27th, I think that's one thing. Another thing is get out early. Don't wait till election day, because life happens.
Yeah.
Things can get in the way, and then you can say, "Oh shucks, I didn't vote," but hey, my vote doesn't count. That is the wrong attitude.
Absolutely.
I think everybody out and go early.
Yeah. You mentioned you had an independent. Generally speaking, from what I can tell of independents, at least in Tennessee, it's really independent. Really just means Democrat incognito. That's pretty much what independent seems to mean in Tennessee, at least. Hey, well,
Exactly.
I appreciate you coming on. Good luck to you. And it sounds like you're going to put up a good fight. And hey, here's the deal. If you do get elected, I'll have you back on.
I will take that.
And,
I will take that.
And I may not be as friendly depending on how you do up there.
Well, no, that's the thing I tell people. Either, find me in the street and shake my hand or wring my neck, but I will represent the people of Sullivan and Hawkins County to the max.
Absolutely. Well, hey, once again, appreciate it. Good luck to you. Take care.
Thank you.
I want to thank you all for taking the time to watch our program tonight. Please be sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons, as well as the notification bell, so that you never miss a show. The TI is also available to listen to as an audio podcast on iHeartRadio, Spotify, Spreaker, and other popular podcast platforms. Just do a search for Tennessee Informer, and you'll find all of our shows, or you can find them on our website, TennesseeInformer.com. While you're there, take a moment to sign up for our weekly newsletter to stay up to date. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter as well. Just search for @TNInformer. Share us with your friends. Please join us again tonight at 8:30 Central for our second show with our guest, Karen Bracken, the founder of TNCSS, who is active and well-informed on a number of issues. She will discuss the risk to our sovereignty associated with the WHO Treaty and what our state is already doing to promote this policy through One Health. Yeah, it's already on our state site. Look at One Health. It's a problem. We'll talk about that more. She'll be joined by Brian O'Shea, a former military intelligence analyst who also hosts Unrestricted Invasion on Daily Clout IO. Brian will give us additional information on One Health and how the Chinese government may be involved in all of this. And bear with me. Also join us this coming Sunday, June 2nd, it's a rare Sunday show. I'm not going to do a lot of those. This is at 11 a.m. for a special edition of Tennessee Informer, when our guest will be David Rogers Webb, the author of The Great Taking. David will tell us how our state can protect our financial investments from being taken away by the central banks in the event of a financial crisis. If you've ever heard of the Uniform Commercial Code, that's what this is in reference to, in certain provisions that mean you, the individual investor, are not necessarily protected if we have a big financial collapse, crash, incident, whatever you want to call it. And he'll be with us live from Sweden. He did testify this past session in the Tennessee House of Representatives in one of the committees there. Hope you'll join us. That's it for now. Good night from Paris, Tennessee, that is.